I want you to remind yourself that your worthiness should not be wrapped up in what you eat. You shouldn't feel like you're good or bad based on what you're eating. They're not meant to be tied together, but we've been taught for so long that our worthiness should be wrapped up in what we're eating. It should be wrapped up in how we look. It should be wrapped up in what size we are. And that's not true. It's just a lie we've been fed for years. We are going to be continuing with the theme of healing our relationship with food and our body. And this episode, I'm going to be giving you 10 common phrases that you need to ditch along with diet culture. Y'all know I'm all about healing your relationship with food and breaking up with the crazy, restrictive, toxic diet culture. It's very, very hard to break out of because so much of it is ingrained since we were children. Generationally, it's passed down. But I want to take time with these phrases because I've talked about the importance of intention and self-awareness. I just want you to become a little more self-aware of how you're speaking about yourself, how you're speaking about your relationship to food. And if you can start to take these out of your vocabulary, not only is it going to positively impact you, your relationship with your body, your relationship with food, but it's also going to positively impact the other people around you. Sometimes when we're in our own ish, we don't realize the impact our words can have on others. And you might be saying something that is very much triggering someone else. I can talk more about that later and just how to be a little bit more empathetic towards others. But let's start with you because you guys know it all starts with you. So let's go through these phrases quickly. If you are like, damn, J.Go, I use these phrases all the time, or my mom says this almost every time I see her, it's okay, release it. Don't feel guilty about it, but just become more aware of it. And then I'll tell you at the end of the episode what to do when they do come up from your own mouth as well as from the mouths of others around you. So we will hit with that, but I want to make sure that you get through all these phrases. There are other ones as well, but these are the ones I hear the most in my current environment. Well, not my current environment, but in past environment, especially in gym culture. All right, let's go. Number 1, I'm being good today by eating this salad, or just I'm being good. Someone offers you maybe a snack or a dessert or something, and your response is, no, I'm being good today. This might seem like it's not a big deal, but it's really implying that certain foods are bad and should be avoided. And it's reinforcing that restrictive, negative approach to eating. And when you do that, it's also telling your brain that when you do eat those foods, you should feel bad and guilty about it. So it's not helping you actually have a good relationship with food. So even when you are eating a salad to be good, if you're speaking in that way and you're positioning it as being a good thing, it's not going to be the best relationship for you and food. Also, when you say things like that, you're going to make other people feel shitty if they do eat the cookie in the workroom or whatever. So it's just not worth commenting on because it shouldn't really matter. It can be your choice whether you do or don't eat a salad, but you don't need to associate worthiness to it, whether it's good or bad based on what you're eating. We'll get more into that later. Number 2, okay, this one can be very triggering as someone who overexercised a lot. Let's say you're at a restaurant with friends and you just ate a really big meal or you had a buffet or whatever, and your response after eating or immediately after feeling full is, I'll have to work this off later. Whether this is something that you say in your head or out loud, this is implying that transactional situation with food and exercise that I talked about in the last episode. It's saying that food has to be earned through exercise, and it's reinforcing the idea that eating is something you should feel bad about, especially if you don't work out that day. And that is bullshit for so many reasons. It's very toxic to say that I'll have to work this off later because that's not how our bodies work in the same sense. Even if you don't work out that day, you still need to eat. If you were to sit in bed all day, your body still needs food to function. So to tell yourself you don't deserve a meal or that you should feel guilty about having a meal, even if you did maybe eat a little bit more at this meal than you expected to, it is not helping you to feel guilty about it. And it's not helping you to work it off, quote unquote, because that is not how movement should be treated. It should be treated as a way to nourish your body, show your body love. It should not be a form of punishment. And when you do that, it is very, very toxic for yourself, your body, and your healing process. So I do not recommend saying that at all, saying I have to work this off later. Now with this phrase, I have heard this a lot. So if you are in the middle of your healing journey, a lot of you have already been listening to this for a while, maybe these phrases aren't coming out of your mouth, but out of the mouths of other people around you. What do you do, J.Go? What do I do if I'm hearing these phrases? It's up to you. When you start your own healing journey, as you get stronger with it, it can become less triggering, and you can always choose what we want to do. I did an episode on this actually around November in season 1. I talk about how to respond to relatives or people speaking about your food. So if they are saying phrases that are just not the most productive, especially if it's around your kids, I would speak up. I would absolutely speak up and say something, because I think it's important for your kids to see you speak up and say something. If you don't feel comfortable speaking up in front of that person, or you don't want to call that person out and make them feel bad for saying that, you could just return it with a question. Instead of saying, don't say that and be sassy, you can say, like, why do you feel that way? We don't have to earn our food. Like, I don't want you to feel that way. And come from a place of compassion. Hearing how nice that sounds, that can be good. And the cool thing about that phrase is you can also say those same things to yourself. So if you are listening to this and you're like, oh wait, I literally said that yesterday, J.Go, that's okay. Have the conversation with yourself and be like, why do we feel that way? Maybe because we grew up thinking that, and we're having to break up this idea that we had for decades of our lives, and it takes time to do that, and that's okay. We're going to work on not using that phrase as often. Boom. There you go. Okay. Number 3. I get this one a lot from family members say this a lot, where they're like, I'm not eating carbs right now. Maybe they're keto, maybe they're carnivore. Yeah, that's a diet. Don't get me started on it. But saying something like, I'm not eating carbs right now, it's basically saying like you want to cut out an entire macronutrient group because it's bad and it should be avoided. And that is going to lead to unbalanced eating. If you're constantly seeing that as bad, your body's going to respond accordingly. And then when you do eat those carbs, it's going to respond accordingly, because you're so used to restricting that when you do have that piece of bread that you never have, guess what? It feels like a treat. It feels special, and your body responds by wanting to eat more, because we've created this lack mindset around food and this all or nothing mindset around our choices. And that creates this pressure and resistance. And I've talked about this before, but again, if you think about this, the choices we're making are on a pendulum. And so if you are in this restrictive mindset all on the way of the right side of the pendulum, where you're like, I don't eat any carbs, which by the way, fruits and veggies are carbs and they're very good for you. And so are other carbs. But you're like, I don't eat any carbs. I'm not going to do this. I can't have this, 0 sugar, 0 fat, blah, blah, blah. And you just set this really restrictive plan for yourself. Then what happens the second you eat a piece of bread or that dinner roll or whatever it is? You sway and swing all the way to the other side of the pendulum, where you're going overboard, where you're eating way more than is comfortable for your body. And then you feel really guilty about it. And then you go right back to the restrictive. And we can't get out of that cycle when we keep that all or nothing mindset, when we keep that restrict, binge type of eating pattern. And so if you're in that space and you're like, I can't have a bag of chips in my house, I can't have any ice cream in my house. I used to be there. I used to be that person too. And it took time to break up with it. And if you still can't have that in your house right now because you're working through it, that's okay. But let's start with our words first. Let's avoid saying things like, I'm not eating that, or I'm not eating carbs. Please don't cut out an entire macronutrient group just because you've been taught that carbs are bad and we should fear them. Do not fear them. Your body actually needs them to function. Your brain actually needs them to function. So please eat the bread. Okay. Obviously, if you're gluten intolerant or anything like that, you can change it, but let's keep going. Okay. I feel guilty for eating this. This is one that's hard because sometimes we don't say it, but we still think it. I remember with my journey with food and healing my relationship with food, I got pretty good at watching how I spoke about food, and then I got pretty aware of how other people spoke about it. But I still had this inner situation going on in my brain, like, oh my gosh, I feel so guilty for eating this. It was like almost automatic. Have you guys ever had that? I've had clients where it's like, even feeling, this breaks my heart, by the way, because we all deserve to feel full and satisfied with our hunger. But where whenever they had a feeling of being full, it triggered them feeling guilty and bad and like they need to punish themselves. And if you're in that space, I want to tell you it's not easy. Get help if you need it. Get support if you need it from a coach, from a therapist, and from a registered dietitian. But you're not alone in that. I don't want you to feel guilty about it. And then we need to break up with this idea of shame around eating certain foods, around feeling full, and start to just feel grateful for your body digesting this food, for you having access to this food. And if you start to shift that away from guilt, it can really, really help you. And if you start to just shake off the intensity of it, like when you do eat a piece of cake or you eat something that you're like, I'm so bad for this, now I'm feeling guilty, and it's like snowballing, instead stop yourself and be like, wait, you know what? It's just a piece of cake. It's not the end of the world. I have my meal prepped for tomorrow, or I can literally go to the grocery store right now and prep my food. So I don't need to see it as a complete wash, and it's not bad. It's not going to impede my progress if I am working towards something. It's not going to make me unhealthy by eating one piece of cake. Just like eating one salad is not going to make you a rock star epitome of health. So find that balance for you, but do it without having guilt along the way. Okay, this next one's going to be a little controversial. Talking about things like I'm on a cleanse or a detox right now. Again, this one's controversial. I have great friends who still go on cleanses and detoxes. And I think a lot of us do them without any actual support. I think we do them because it's still tied in fat phobia and trying to lose weight. It's not actually tied in health. So that's the issue. A lot of people will mask these detoxes and cleanses as if they're for their health, when really it's because they feel like, oh, I need to lose weight really quickly. And this worked for me in the past. We'll tell you, typically with cleanses and detoxes, you are just losing water weight. So do not get caught up in that bullshit. And when it comes to cleanses and detoxes, you need to make sure you are getting support from your doctor, from your naturopath, from someone who's going to help you through the entire process. Because if you're just doing some cayenne pepper, I did this as a kid in middle school, cayenne pepper, maple syrup, water, lemon juice, and I did it for like 7 days, like a crazy person. I'm pretty sure like Kim K talked about it. Someone talked about it. I don't want to trash them, but like someone talked about it. And then me as a kid in high school, it was not middle school, tried to do it, and it was terrible. And I hated it, and I had no energy, and I would go to track practice or cross country or whatever and want to pass out. And it's so frustrating that people will accept that cleanse detox and talk about it. So if you are, let's say you're like on the other side of the spectrum with cleanse and detox, and you're like, I've talked about with my doctor and we're taking out certain foods, and maybe you are doing a specific type of cleanse, or you're doing fasting for religious purposes or something like that. That's a whole different thing. The other thing I will say about that is if you are doing that, especially with fasting, I think there's value to doing that for yourself and not necessarily broadcasting like, oh yeah, I'm on my 5th day of my fast. If it really is a spiritual thing and you are working with it in a way that's going to be a healthy approach to it, I don't think there's any need to broadcast it, because it might be triggering for someone who is recovering from disordered eating and mindset behind that, or it makes them feel like they should be doing it too. So just something to be aware of. There's not a lot of scientific evidence supporting these types of cleanses. A lot of times they end in people binging either in the middle of it or at the end of it. And so if you don't have a game plan for after, I just don't really recommend it. Are there different things you can do to help support? Absolutely. Instead of trying to take everything out of your diet, instead give yourself like, okay, for the next week, I'm going to challenge myself to eat a vegetable with every single meal. So every single meal I have, I will somehow incorporate a vegetable. Or every single meal I have, I'm going to finish a glass of water before or after, whatever feels best for you digestive wise. That approach is going to be a lot more healthy, and it's helping you incorporate healthy habits instead of thinking you have to cut everything out. Notice the difference from that opposed to just going straight to some crazy cleanse. Have I done juicing before? Yes. Have I done things like that before? Yes. Can there be benefits to things like that? Absolutely. But I really think you need to make sure you are connecting with a naturopath or a doctor that's supporting you through that, not just doing something you saw on social media or your friend did or whatever, because they don't know everything about your health, and it's just not a great approach. Okay, done talking about those. Next one. This is big. I can't eat that. It has too many calories. So I don't know if y'all grew up around calories being like the be all end all and like the 100 calorie packs. And we were so hyper focused on calories. And a lot of us still are, that we saw food as like really bad if it was calorically dense, if it was high calorie, and we would feel really bad if we ate that. And I'm not saying that that's not possible. Like a lot of times if you're eating more nutrient dense foods, you are going to feel better. And if you're eating, lower nutrient dense foods, so if you ate McDonald's every day for a week, you are going to feel like crap. But I don't want you to feel like you're going in the spiral if you do eat out one night, or saying that you can't have something because it's too many calories. That's again putting restriction on you. So then what happens when you do eat something? You feel really guilty, and it leads to some disordered mindset around it, and it can just be really harsh on you. Now, you can always eat it and you can choose when to stop. Like just because it has too many calories, you decide how much of something you eat. So instead of being super strict on yourself, maybe say, I'm just going to eat until I'm full, or even though it is high calorie, I'm going to enjoy myself and not feel guilty about it. So slowly doing things like that can be helpful. I know I used to be weird about specific things because I was taught like butter was bad and all these different things. Mayonnaise, I like feared mayonnaise. Still kind of weird about mayonnaise. I wouldn't eat rice because of the whole carb thing. And so I had to slowly incorporate those things. So I don't want you to feel bad if you still are weird about certain things being too many calories. And you can still make the choice and be like, hey, you know what? This is higher calories. I would rather have a more voluminous meal, like a more, basically think a big bowl of something that's higher volume, maybe a little lower calories, so that I can feel more satisfied in my day. That is an intentional choice based on what you think is going to make you feel your best. But you're not saying, oh, I can't have this, because you absolutely can have it. It's just, in the long run, I'm going to choose to have this instead. So see it as a choice opposed to a restriction. So that's a big shift there. Okay, I hear this one a lot around space, especially, oh man, I just hear it a lot. So saying things like, I'm being so bad, or it's just a treat, I'm having a treat, like creating this importance behind specific foods. And what I mean by importance is like, this is special. Like this is a special treat, so we don't have to feel bad about it. You never have to feel bad about it. You're not being bad by eating a cookie, Susan. Just kidding. You're not being bad by eating a cookie. You are eating a cookie. End of sentence. But we are so used to putting worth of something being good or bad, and then we take that worth of the food and we translate it to ourselves. Okay, eating a cookie is bad because that's what I was taught. So when I eat a cookie, therefore I am bad, because if A equals B and B equals C, then A equals C. You guys know about math, you know what I'm talking about. It's not true. It creates a restrictive approach to eating, and it keeps the worth behind food, and we got to get rid of that. So break up with that phrase of saying you're being bad when it comes to eating something. You're not. Okay, I need to lose weight before I can wear that. Y'all know how I feel about that. Wear the crop top, put on the shorts. Do not hide who you are now in this current body. You're beautiful. You can step into confidence even now. You can wear that outfit right now. You do not have to wait until you are a specific weight to wear something, okay? Do not put those types of rules on yourself when there's something that you want to try, there's something you want to wear. I talked about this more in the 2000s trends episode, but you do not need to hit a certain weight goal before you wear something. And I also don't support having like a goal size, and I don't support having a goal outfit. Can you celebrate and buy new clothes when your body does change? Absolutely. That's totally fine. But for you to basically say like, I can't buy new clothes until I'm in a different body. Okay, like maybe you don't want to spend actual money, but go to a thrift store, go find something that still makes you feel good. Go through your current closet and see if there's anything that does fit you. And instead of saying like you have to lose weight before you can start dressing in a way that makes you feel confident, no, you absolutely do not need to hide yourself. Like you still deserve to be seen, to be loved, to feel beautiful in the current body that you're in right now. You hear me? You deserve that now. Not when you hit a certain number on the scale, not when you're making a certain amount of money, not when you feel like you're the right size, because there is no right size. There's your current size. And I want you to find beauty in the present. Even if your body does change, even as you change habits, your body, like weight loss might be a byproduct of that. But if you're constantly holding off until you hit that point, it's not a healthy mindset, because you are telling yourself you're not worthy in the current state that you're in. And you are. You are absolutely worthy. And I want you to feel that love coming from me right now. Okay. I hope you heard that. All right. This one is controversial for me because I used to preach something opposite of this. So listen up. I'm not eating after 6 p.m. I'm not eating after 7 p.m. I can't eat after this time. So y'all might have heard a while back, I talked about intermittent fasting. And I did actually preach intermittent fasting because I read a lot of data on it. I read different studies. I read scientific reports from like straight up research centers and research journals and all of those places. And yet, as I started to learn more about cycle syncing and understanding women's hormones, we were not included in those studies. Like we, when I say we, is someone who is currently in that 20 to late 30 range where your hormones are constantly changing. Every 28 days, there's a lot of change in our progesterone and our estrogen, and we weren't included in that. And so the thing about it is if we are not eating until the afternoon So with the intermittent fasting, basically one of the forms of it was you were waiting to eat until a specific time, until you hit a certain fasting window, and then you stopped eating a specific time. And the thing that came up with this is like people were losing weight and they're like, oh my gosh, I'm losing weight. This is great. That's awesome. But a lot of it is because you were in a deficit, a caloric deficit, and you're going to lose weight regardless of what time you're eating. If you're in a caloric deficit and you're taking care of your body, yes, that's just going to happen. But what can happen over time if you are putting off eating until later in the day, when, your hormones are actually dropping by the afternoon, it can affect you. It can affect a lot of you when it comes to your energy. It can affect your stress levels, your cortisol levels, your hormones, all of the above. And I no longer preach that because I have learned a lot more about it. And so if you are someone who is currently not eating breakfast, that was me. Start to slowly eat a little bit earlier. And it's totally fine. Like, you are going to feel better if you're not eating right before bed. So think about what time you go to bed and do give yourself some space. Typically they say like 2 to 3 hours at least. But if you're hungry and you have a crazy work schedule, I also believe that it's important to eat. So that's going to be the most important thing, is making sure you're fed. And that's number one. And then we kind of go from there. But stop giving yourself rules about like when you can and can't eat, and start to come back into your intention of like, okay, intuitively, like, what does my body need right now? Well, I had a really busy work day and I didn't get to eat lunch. Well, today I'm going to eat dinner a little bit later, and that's okay. I'm not going to feel guilty about it. So break up with these rules, and that's going to help you start to heal that relationship with food. And then finally, do y'all remember those videos where they're still out there, where everyone shares like their cheat day, where they're like, okay, this is my cheat day, and I eat like 3,000 calories, like just something crazy, where they're eating so much food in this one day, and it's just like, that's what they do. And it scares me because I'm like, I don't see that as healthy, going all the way to the other end of the spectrum. Thinking about that spectrum again, you're super, super restrictive, and then you let go on that cheat day and you're all the way on the other end. Your body's going to be like, what is going on? And it's not going to be helpful for us. And sometimes when people do that cheat day, because they went super restrictive beforehand, it's hard for them to bring it back, and it can turn into like completely throwing them off their routine. Whereas if you can find a balance and consistency and allow yourself to have some of those other foods now and again, you won't feel that same level of all or nothing. And that's something that's really important, because the cheat day mentality is reinforcing the idea that certain foods are bad and you should avoid them. And then it leads to feelings of guilt and shame if you don't make it to your cheat day or eat something and it's not a cheat day. That whole cheat day mentality, I just don't even like the word in general. So I'm all over it. But the reason I'm talking about these different phrases is I want you to remind yourself that your worthiness should not be wrapped up in what you eat. You shouldn't feel like you're good or bad based on what you're eating. They're not meant to be tied together, but we've been taught for so long that our worthiness should be wrapped up in what we're eating. It should be wrapped up in how we look. It should be wrapped up in what size we are. And that's not true. It's just a lie we've been fed for years. So break up with those lies and start stepping into your confidence and into this beautiful relationship with your body and with food. But it starts with your words. So breaking up with that black and white mindset, just to kind of leave this with you, it's that all or nothing mindset, thinking that your success is based on if you are good or bad with your eating. When it comes to success, I mean, if you do have success of you're wanting to eat healthier or you are wanting to lose weight, break up with the idea of good and bad, and you're going to lessen the chances of binge or emotional eating, as well as actually allow space for you to heal that relationship with food. And I will say, I've worked with a lot of clients, and sometimes they come to me and they're like, J.Go, like, I'm trying to lose weight. Like, this is what I want to do. I help people create change through healthy habits. We break up with the idea of weight loss being the top of the podium of what you want to do. But sometimes through this process, they realize they actually need to create more space for their healing that relationship with food first. And down the road, weight loss can be a byproduct, but they need to have that healing relationship with these foods. And they need to allow themselves to maybe eat some of these foods they didn't eat before. And so we create space for that. And then we come back to balance and we figure out, what does that look like for me? What does intuitive eating look like in my life? And listening to my body, you heal that relationship with your body first. And then you can start to really tap into that gut feeling, tap into the intuition that we all have the capacity for. We all have so much power within us, but because we have such crappy relationship with our bodies and with food, it's breaking that trust that we used to have with ourselves. Think about when you were a kid, you were a toddler, like you would eat when you were hungry, you would stop when you were full. And that was just kind of it until you started taking other habits around you, or you started to be taught different habits around you. And it led to shifted thinking in our relationship with food and with ourselves and with our bodies. And so my goal is for you to come back to that space where you felt free to listen to your body, to listen to yourself, and to love yourself regardless of what you're eating. So hope this was helpful. Let me know what phrase you feel like is the one you have to ditch right away because you've been saying it so often. No judgment here. I'm just super curious if there are any other phrases you hear, or if you have other questions about just your environment. If you are hearing these phrases and not saying them, what you can do. I'll give you that other episode that I talked about a while back. It was around Thanksgiving of last year. I'll try and find that episode. But besides that, definitely reach out. Let me know about this episode. We have some exciting things coming into the new month, so stay tuned. If you are not subscribed to the podcast, make sure you subscribe right now. And then those of you who have left me reviews, you are amazing. I'm going to start sharing them on the podcast page at Confidently Uncomfortable. So be ready to see your shout out of the podcast reviews. If you haven't reviewed yet, it would mean everything if you would leave a review for us. We are continuing to grow. I'm really working on growing this podcast to give you guys this information for free. So we're going to be working on sponsorships. However, we will only be working with people who we really connect with as a brand, and I actually use the product. So for example, this little guy, if you don't know, I'm on YouTube right now, but this little guy that I'm drinking, it's a green drink, and I've been trying it for 7 days now. I'm not even going to shout the name out yet, but if you hear a advertisement about me with it, then that means that it is something that I do back, and it's something that I do believe in, and that I think is working really well for me, and that I'm continuing to use, and I'll share it with you. For now, I'll keep you updated on it, so stay tuned. Thanks, guys.